Welcome to Zoe Stories. I wore her heels. Now I can't stop. The late afternoon sun filtered through the blinds, casting a soft, golden light across the small apartment. I sank onto the edge of the couch, feeling the day's fatigue in my shoulders, yet a restless energy coursed through me that I couldn't quite shake. My name is Alex, a 27-year-old graphic designer with a passion for creativity, both in my work and, quietly, in my personal explorations. Most people see me as calm, collected, a guy who meets deadlines and keeps his life tidy, but beneath that exterior was a side of me I rarely allowed anyone to see: my fascination with cross-dressing. It wasn't something I was forced into, nor a secret born of shame. It was curiosity and thrill, a way to explore the fluidity of identity. The first time I had slipped into heels and felt the subtle power and elegance in the way they altered my posture, I had known it was something I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just about clothing. It was about transformation, a ritual that allowed me to discover parts of myself that otherwise remained hidden. Emma, my girlfriend of 2 years, had been my confidant in small ways, though not fully aware of the extent of my cross-dressing explorations. She was practical, sharp, and incredibly intuitive, a combination that sometimes made me nervous, especially when my desires nudged toward indulgence and risk. She had a habit of leaving her shoes around the apartment, a careless familiarity that would unknowingly lead to the events that changed everything. I glanced down at the sleek, black heels she had left by the door, their pointed tips and slender stiletto heels gleaming in the afternoon light. They weren't just shoes. They were symbols, a secret doorway into a persona I could fully inhabit. I had walked past them countless times, resisting temptation, but today something was different. Perhaps it was the quiet hum of the apartment, the solitude that stretched from the living room to the kitchen. Perhaps it was the lingering thrill of imagination that refused to fade. Whatever it was, I found myself bending down, fingers brushing over the smooth leather, heart picking up pace, as if recognizing an unspoken promise. Sliding my feet into the shoes, I felt an immediate shift. The sharp rise of the heels altered my stance, making me more aware of every movement, every tilt of my spine, every subtle shift in balance. It was intoxicating. I wobbled slightly at first, unfamiliar with the heightened angle, but soon found a rhythm. The sensation of the shoes beneath my feet was both grounding and liberating, a paradoxical mix of elegance and vulnerability. I could feel my body responding in ways that were completely foreign and thrilling all at once. Emma's voice, calling from the bedroom, startled me slightly. "Alex? You home?" I froze, panic and exhilaration warring within me. "Yeah, just here," I called back, my voice slightly higher than normal, betraying a nervous excitement. I prayed she wouldn't notice my subtle transformation, the way the heels had already begun to shift not only my posture, but the way I carried myself. Alone in the living room again, I let myself sink deeper into the experience. I walked toward the mirror, every step a delicate negotiation of balance and grace. The reflection staring back at me was both familiar and strange. Alex, yes, but Alex elevated, almost ethereal, carried on the thin platform of Emma's heels. The subtle sway of my hips, the rise of my chest, the angle of my shoulders, it was all new, and every detail sent a thrill through me. I caught sight of a folded dress Emma had left on the couch earlier, and a daring thought flitted through my mind. What if? The idea was reckless, thrilling, and terrifying all at once. I hesitated only briefly before draping the soft fabric over my shoulders, feeling its texture against my skin, the subtle weight of it grounding me while simultaneously pulling me into a persona I had longed to explore. The mirror reflected not just my physical change, but the awakening of something deeper, a version of me that reveled in elegance, poise, and the thrill of being seen in a light I rarely allowed. Time seemed to stretch. I experimented with different poses, small gestures, the way my hands rested against the dress, the way I shifted my weight from one heel to the other. Every moment was electric, a delicate mix of fear and excitement. I felt exposed in a way I hadn't anticipated, yet empowered in the same breath. The shoes, the dress, The mirror, it was all part of a ritual, a private performance that allowed me to explore the edges of identity, confidence, and desire. A knock at the door jolted me back to reality. My pulse jumped, fear mingling with excitement. Emma wasn't supposed to be back for another hour. Who could it be? My imagination ran wild with possibilities, every scenario tinged with suspense. I could feel the transformation intensifying, not just in my appearance, but in the subtle changes in my voice, my gestures, the very way I occupied space. The thrill of being caught, or nearly caught, added an intoxicating layer of tension to the afternoon. I crept toward the door, heels clicking softly against the hardwood, and peeked through the peephole. Relief and anticipation mingled. It was just a neighbor, but the encounter reminded me how fragile the balance was. Every step, every glance, every subtle movement was now a negotiation between secrecy and thrill, fear and liberation. Returning to the mirror, I took a deep breath and let myself fully inhabit the persona. The heels had shifted more than my posture. They had unlocked a part of me that had long been dormant, a side that delighted in elegance, allure, and the delicate thrill of transformation. I knew then that this was only the beginning. Emma's shoes, innocent in their presence, had become the catalyst for something I couldn't ignore. Something that, once begun, wouldn't let me stop. The soft click of the heels against the hardwood floor echoed through the apartment, each step amplifying my awareness of the shoes beneath me. They weren't just shoes. They were a key, unlocking something I had long kept hidden. I paced slowly, testing my balance, feeling the subtle arch of my feet and the rise in my posture. Each movement was a revelation. My body felt alive in ways it hadn't before, every nerve buzzing with anticipation and self-conscious excitement. I glanced at the mirror again. The reflection staring back wasn't just Alex, it was Alex elevated, transformed. The heels accentuated the curve of my legs, shifted my center of gravity, and forced a delicate sway in my hips that felt both foreign and intoxicating. My shoulders lifted subtly, my chest angled slightly forward, and I noticed the difference in how I held myself. There was power in it, but also vulnerability, a strange, thrilling combination that left my heart racing. I remember the first time I had tried cross-dressing, tentatively slipping into Emma's older clothes as a private experiment. Back then, the thrill had been fleeting, tinged with embarrassment. But now, with the heels on my feet, the sensation was amplified. There was no hiding here. I could feel the transformation in my posture, in the way my muscles responded, and in the way I imagined others might perceive me if they were watching. The anticipation of being discovered, of someone seeing me like this, added a delicious tension to every step. Curiosity took over. I walked over to the closet where Emma kept some of her dresses, my fingers brushing lightly over the fabrics. Each texture was different: silk, cotton, lace, each offering a unique promise of transformation. I picked up a black dress she had worn once for a dinner party, feeling the weight of it in my hands. The idea of wearing it made my pulse quicken, a mixture of excitement and nervous fear swirling inside me. Could I pull it off? Would it feel right? Or would it be another failed attempt? I shrugged out of my t-shirt and jeans, heart pounding. The fabric of the dress slipped over my shoulders, settling against my skin like a second layer of identity. The mirror reflected my transformation: Alex, elevated by the heels, reshaped by the dress, fully inhabiting a persona I rarely allowed myself to explore. The thrill was overwhelming. My reflection stared back with wide, curious eyes, a mixture of disbelief and exhilaration. I was both me and not me, and the tension between those identities sent shivers down my spine. I experimented with movement, taking careful steps, feeling the sway of the dress with each stride. The heels forced me to focus on balance, every muscle engaged, every step deliberate. There was a rhythm emerging, a subtle confidence that had been absent before. Yet alongside that confidence was vulnerability. I felt exposed, acutely aware of how someone might perceive me if they entered the apartment right now. The suspense of potential discovery heightened my awareness, turning every glance toward the door into a tiny jolt of adrenaline. My hands wandered to the small makeup kit Emma had left on the counter. A dab of foundation, a stroke of eyeliner, a touch of lip gloss. Each application shifted my face subtly, accentuating features I hadn't noticed before. The mirror reflected not just physical change, but emotional transformation. I could feel the persona solidifying, a version of me that was confident, elegant, and undeniably alive. And yet, beneath it all, a flicker of anxiety remained. What if someone saw me like this? What if Emma returned unexpectedly? I moved cautiously around the apartment, heels clicking, the dress flowing. Each step felt like a dance between exhilaration and fear. The internal struggle was intense. The desire to fully embrace this version of myself, the thrill of transformation, and the fear of judgment or exposure. The suspense wasn't just external, it was woven into every fiber of my being, an emotional tension that made my pulse race and my hands tremble. Then I noticed the small jewelry box Emma had left on the dresser. A delicate bracelet, a set of rings, a pendant with a subtle shimmer. Each piece seemed to call to me. I selected a thin silver bracelet and slid it onto my wrist. The tiny weight against my skin was a tactile confirmation of the transformation, a small but significant detail that completed the persona I was stepping into. I caught my reflection again. The dress, the heels, the makeup, the jewelry, it was no longer a casual experiment. This was fully me in a new form, alive and visible in ways I hadn't imagined possible. I paused, taking a deep breath, trying to ground myself. The apartment was silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioner and the rhythmic click of my heels. Every sound, every shadow seemed magnified, a reminder that I was fully immersed in this experience. The suspense was relentless. Every passing minute heightened my awareness, every glance at the door a reminder of potential discovery. The thrill and fear were intertwined, creating a heady mix that left me exhilarated and slightly breathless. Curiosity and audacity nudged me further. I picked up Emma's heels, the ones she had left by the door earlier. Sliding my feet back into them, I felt the subtle arch in my posture, the shift in my balance. The shoes were no longer just objects, they were instruments of transformation, tools that reshaped not only my body, but my sense of self. Each step was deliberate, measured, a dance between control and surrender. As I moved back toward the mirror, I experimented with poses, small gestures that emphasized elegance and grace. I tilted my head, adjusted the dress, and let my fingers brush along my neck and shoulders. The mirror reflected a persona that was confident, playful, and alive. Yet beneath it all, the suspense lingered, a constant awareness of how quickly this delicate balance could be disrupted. A sudden knock at the door jolted me, heart leaping. I froze, heels clicking softly as I stepped back. Emma wasn't supposed to be home for another hour. Who could it be? The suspense surged, tightening around me like a coil ready to snap. I held my breath, every muscle tense, imagining the consequences if someone saw me now. The thrill of being caught or nearly caught was intoxicating, a pulse that made my skin tingle and my mind race. I glanced back at the mirror, catching my reflection one last time before moving toward the door. Alex, elevated and transformed, stared back at me with wide eyes. The suspense was palpable, each heartbeat a reminder that this journey was just beginning. The thrill, the vulnerability, the intoxicating power of transformation, it had all taken hold, and I knew there was no turning back. The knock at the door lingered in my ears, echoing like a warning as I took slow, deliberate steps back toward the couch. My heels clicked softly against the hardwood, each step reminding me of the precarious balance I had embraced. The thrill of being caught, or nearly caught, still buzzed through me, an electric tension that made my pulse race. I couldn't help but glance at the mirror again. The reflection staring back was mesmerizing. Alex, transformed, poised, and fragile all at once, caught between exhilaration and fear. I sank onto the edge of the couch, trying to steady my trembling hands. The heels beneath my feet shifted my posture in ways that demanded attention, and I realized how much power they held, not just physically, but emotionally. Every subtle sway of my hips, every angle of my shoulders, every tilt of my head was amplified by the shoes. The mirror reflected more than my appearance. It reflected the awakening of a persona I hadn't fully acknowledged before. Curiosity gnawed at me. What if I took it further? What if I fully embraced this persona, exploring the boundaries of appearance, posture, and self-expression? I stood slowly, adjusting the dress so it fell perfectly along my thighs. The silky fabric glided over my skin, a tactile reminder of how different, yet natural, this transformation felt. I lifted my chin and allowed myself to walk toward the kitchen, each step deliberate, feeling the subtle rhythm imposed by the heels. The sound of each click against the floor heightened my awareness, a heartbeat in time, with the suspense building inside me. The apartment felt unusually quiet, almost expectant. Every shadow seemed to stretch, every sound amplified. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, the faint rustle of the curtains, each became a part of the heightened sensory experience. I moved carefully, aware that even the smallest misstep could betray my secret. Yet beneath the caution was an undeniable thrill, a heady mixture of fear and excitement that made every nerve ending tingle. I reached for a pair of earrings Emma had left on the counter. Sliding them onto my ears, I felt the subtle weight, a delicate confirmation of the transformation I was undergoing. Each accessory, each detail, was a step deeper into this persona. I practiced small gestures in the mirror, the way my hands rested against my hips, the tilt of my neck, the way I shifted my weight from one heel to the other. The reflection stared back with wide, curious eyes. Alex elevated, transformed, undeniably alive in a way that was thrilling and terrifying at the same time. The suspense of potential discovery gnawed at me. Emma could walk in at any moment. A neighbor could come by. Every sound outside the apartment felt magnified, every passing moment pregnant with possibility. I paused, heels clicking softly as I inched toward the living room, listening intently. The thrill of almost being caught added an intoxicating tension, a delicate tightrope that I balanced on with each careful movement. Then, a text notification buzzed on my phone. My hand shook slightly as I picked it up. It was from Emma, a simple message. Running late. Don't wait up? Relief washed over me, but it was mingled with an unexpected surge of audacity. Alone, the apartment was my stage, and the suspense of potential exposure, while diminished, had been replaced by the freedom to fully explore. I smirked at the thought, sliding my fingers over the phone screen as I imagined the possibilities. The heels forced me to move with intention, every step measured, every gesture deliberate. I experimented with walking across the room, feeling the subtle sway in my hips and the lift in my chest. The dress clung gently, flowing with my movements. Each detail of my appearance, the heels, the dress, the earrings, even the faint shimmer of makeup on my face, contributed to a persona that was simultaneously seductive, playful, and vulnerable. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was deeply emotional. I paused by the mirror again, running my fingers along the neckline of the dress. My reflection seemed almost alive, staring back with wide, expressive eyes that mirrored my inner turmoil. Fear, exhilaration, curiosity, it all collided in a perfect storm of suspense. I could feel the persona solidifying, yet a part of me remained cautious, aware of the fragility of this balance. One wrong move, one unexpected sound, and the illusion could shatter instantly. Curiosity pushed me further. I stepped onto the balcony, the heels clicking softly on the threshold. The city stretched out before me, the sounds of traffic and distant conversations mixing with the quiet of the apartment. The sensation of being elevated, both physically and emotionally, was intoxicating. I leaned lightly against the railing, the dress swaying in the breeze, and allowed myself a small, mischievous smile. The thrill of transformation, of inhabiting a persona that was entirely mine, coursed through me. But the suspense never fully left. A car door slammed in the street below, a neighbor's footsteps echoed on the sidewalk, and my pulse quickened. Every noise, every movement outside, reminded me of how exposed I was, how delicate this balance could be. The heels, while empowering, also amplified my vulnerability. Each step, each sway, each tilt of my head was a negotiation between confidence and caution, desire and fear. Returning to the apartment, I sank onto the couch again, heels still beneath me. I ran my hands over my legs, feeling the subtle lift, the altered posture, the tension and thrill coiled in every muscle. The suspense, while slightly tempered by Emma's delayed return, remained a powerful undercurrent, a constant reminder that this exploration was as risky as it was exhilarating. I caught my reflection one last time before venturing into the bedroom, the heels guiding my movements, the dress swaying with each step. The persona I had embraced was no longer tentative. It was alive, vibrant, and intoxicating. The suspense of discovery, the thrill of transformation, and the delicate balance between fear and exhilaration had fully claimed me. And I knew, with a certainty that made my pulse quicken, that once begun, this journey wouldn't allow me to stop. The apartment felt alive in a way it hadn't before, each shadow and flicker of light carrying its own weight. The heels beneath my feet had become an extension of my identity, a tool that reshaped not only my posture, but my confidence. Every step I took was deliberate, measured, as if the very act of moving could define who I was in this suspended moment. The dress clung gently to my form, swaying with each movement, each ripple of fabric a subtle accentuation of the persona I was fully inhabiting. I wandered toward the living room, pausing to examine the small details of my appearance in the mirror. The makeup on my face caught the soft afternoon light, highlighting features I hadn't truly appreciated before. My eyeliner, applied with hesitant precision, framed my eyes in a way that made them appear larger, more expressive. The blush accentuated my cheekbones delicately, and the soft shimmer of lip gloss caught every ray of light, a reminder of the subtle, yet transformative power of the persona I had embraced. Every glance in the mirror was a mix of fascination and self-consciousness. Who was this reflection staring back at me? Alex, certainly, but elevated, transformed, undeniably visible in a way that was thrilling and frightening all at once. The suspense of someone walking in, of the unexpected, was omnipresent. Every creak of the apartment, every passing siren outside, made my heart race. The thrill of potential exposure amplified the exhilaration of my transformation, creating a heady mix that made each movement electric. I reached for Emma's hairbrush, running it through my hair carefully, smoothing strands into place. The act, mundane yet intimate, grounded me even as it heightened my awareness of the persona I was inhabiting. The reflection in the mirror shifted subtly with each adjustment, my image morphing into something both familiar and strange. The heels, the dress, the makeup, and now the carefully styled hair, everything combined into a persona that felt alive, real, and dangerously captivating. Curiosity compelled me further. I had never experimented with accessorizing beyond a casual touch before, but now I felt emboldened. I selected a delicate necklace from Emma's jewelry box, letting the chain slide over my neck and rest lightly against my collarbone. The subtle weight of it was grounding, a physical reminder of the transformation taking place. I practiced tilting my head, adjusting my posture, allowing the reflection to guide me. The suspense of being caught, or nearly caught, still lingered, but the thrill of inhabiting this persona now outweighed the fear. I stepped cautiously toward the balcony, feeling the familiar rhythm of the heels with each step. The city beyond stretched endlessly, filled with movement and life, yet I felt a bubble of heightened awareness within the apartment. Every sound outside, the distant honk of a car, the murmur of conversation, amplified the tension, a reminder that the world beyond could intersect with my secret at any moment. The suspense was a living, breathing presence, tightening around me as I leaned lightly against the railing, savoring the sway of my dress and the subtle shift of my posture. Back inside, I moved to the kitchen, curious about how this persona would navigate the mundane. Pouring a glass of water, I felt the heels altering the way I reached, the way my balance shifted with each movement. Even in these ordinary tasks, the transformation was profound. The thrill wasn't just in how I looked, it was in how I felt, the heightened awareness of every motion, every gesture, every small nuance of expression. I paused mid-step as a sudden noise from the street below startled me, a car door slamming, footsteps echoing sharply. My pulse quickened, the thrill of potential exposure surging through me. For a moment, I froze, heels clicking softly as I steadied myself. The suspense was intoxicating, each second stretching longer than the last. The danger of being seen, of having this secret unveiled, only amplified the allure of the transformation I had embraced so fully. Returning to the living room, I experimented with posture and movement, testing how the heels altered my center of gravity, the sway of my hips, the tilt of my head. The reflection in the mirror became a silent teacher, guiding me as I discovered new ways to inhabit this persona. The suspense of potential discovery remained a constant undercurrent, yet I was beginning to feel a sense of mastery over the persona I had created. Each step, each gesture, each tilt of the head was deliberate, a performance for an audience that didn't yet exist. I glanced at the clock, realizing how much time had passed. Emma wouldn't be home for another hour, or perhaps more, but the freedom of solitude had allowed me to explore in ways I hadn't dared before. The suspense had evolved from fear of immediate discovery to a heightened, almost playful tension. Each sound, each shadow, each faint movement outside the window was an opportunity to test my balance, my poise, my ability to fully inhabit this persona. The heels beneath my feet had become a kind of anchor, a physical manifestation of the transformation I was undergoing. They elevated me not just physically but emotionally, heightening every sensation, every nuance of posture, every subtle shift in confidence. The dress, the jewelry, the makeup, they were all instruments of change, guiding me deeper into this persona, making the suspense of potential exposure both thrilling and addictive. By the time I returned to the mirror for the third time that hour, I was fully absorbed in the experience. The reflection staring back at me was Alex. Yes, but also something more, a persona that was confident, elegant, and alive in ways I hadn't anticipated. The suspense of discovery, the thrill of transformation, and the intoxicating tension between fear and exhilaration had fully taken hold. I realized with a mix of excitement and apprehension that this was no longer a casual experiment. It was a journey, one I couldn't stop, and one that was only beginning to reveal its depths. By now, the apartment felt less like a home and more like a stage, each corner, each shadow, each sound part of an unseen audience watching my performance. The heels beneath my feet had become extensions of my very identity, forcing every movement to be deliberate, calculated, and undeniably feminine. I could feel the subtle shift in my muscles, the delicate sway in my hips, the careful tilt of my shoulders, all amplified by the shoes, all guiding me deeper into the persona I was inhabiting. The mirror called to me again. Each glance reflected a version of Alex that was fully alive, confident, and mesmerizing, but also delicate, vulnerable, and exposed. My hands traced lightly over the contours of the dress, the silky fabric slipping smoothly against my skin. The transformation wasn't just visual, it was visceral. Every movement, every tilt of my head, every sway of my body carried a weight of possibility and suspense that made my pulse quicken. A sudden thought struck me. What if someone actually saw me? The heels, the dress, the makeup, it all made me feel extraordinary, but it also made me aware of just how fragile this balance was. A knock at the door, or even Emma's unexpected return, could shatter this carefully constructed persona in an instant. The suspense wasn't just thrilling, it was consuming, a tangible tension that wrapped around my chest and made every heartbeat feel like a drum of anticipation. I decided to push boundaries further. Slipping into a slightly more daring pose, I let my fingers brush along the neckline of the dress, adjusting it so that it accentuated my shape just enough to feel bold, without being reckless. Each movement was a delicate dance, guided by intuition and by the heels that forced a new rhythm into my step. I could feel the transformation solidifying, a version of me that was confident, alluring, and dangerously aware of how every detail could be perceived. The thrill of being alone, yet almost exposed, made my movements more daring. I experimented with walking in circles, letting the dress flow naturally, the heels guiding each step with a subtle click that echoed in the quiet apartment. The suspense of potential discovery lingered in the background, transforming from fear into an adrenaline-fueled thrill. Every sound outside, the distant hum of traffic, the faint murmur of a neighbor, made my heart race, sharpening my awareness and heightening the excitement of inhabiting this persona. I paused by the dresser, picking up a pair of earrings I hadn't worn before. Sliding them onto my ears, I felt a subtle weight that anchored me further into the persona I was exploring. The mirror reflected a version of Alex that was confident, playful, and fully aware of the power of this transformation. And yet, beneath the surface, a flicker of fear remained. What if Emma returned unexpectedly? What if someone else saw me? The suspense was constant, a delicate thread that made every movement electric, every gesture meaningful. Curiosity drove me to explore more daring poses, small experiments in balance and grace. I tilted my head, shifted my weight from one heel to the other, let my fingers trace lightly along my arms. The mirror became a silent companion, reflecting every nuance, every detail, every subtle alteration in posture and expression. The persona I had created felt alive, almost tangible, a separate entity that existed fully in the reflection, yet was inseparable from me. A sudden noise from the street below made me freeze mid-step, heels clicking softly as I steadied myself. My pulse spiked, the thrill of potential exposure surging through me. The suspense wasn't just in the possibility of being seen, it was in the intoxicating awareness that I could be, at any moment, caught in this elevated, transformed state. The fear amplified the excitement, each heartbeat a drum of adrenaline that resonated through my entire body. I moved cautiously toward the balcony, the heels guiding each step with precision. The city beyond stretched endlessly, filled with movement and noise, yet I felt an almost hypnotic focus within the apartment. Every detail, the sway of the dress, the tilt of my head, the click of my heels, was magnified by the suspense, the constant tension between freedom and potential discovery. The thrill of inhabiting this persona was intoxicating, a mix of liberation and vulnerability that I hadn't anticipated. Back inside, I paused by the couch, catching my reflection once more. Alex was still there, yes, but elevated, transformed, and undeniably alive. The suspense of discovery, the thrill of transformation, the delicate dance between fear and exhilaration, it had all taken hold, consuming my thoughts, guiding my movements, and intensifying every sensation. The heels had become more than shoes. They were instruments of transformation, tools that reshaped not just my body, but my confidence, my awareness, and my emotional intensity. I sank onto the couch, letting the heels rest comfortably beneath me, and ran my hands over my legs, feeling the subtle arch, the altered posture, the tension coiled in every muscle. The persona I had embraced was no longer tentative, it was fully alive, confident, and intoxicating. The suspense of potential exposure remained, but it had transformed into a driving force, pushing me to explore further, to inhabit this persona fully, and to embrace the thrill of transformation in ways I hadn't imagined possible. By the time I returned to the mirror for the final check of the evening, I was completely absorbed in the experience. The reflection staring back was Alex. Yes, but also a persona elevated, confident, and alive in ways I hadn't known I could achieve. The suspense, the thrill, the exhilaration, it had fully claimed me. I realized with a mix of anticipation and apprehension that the journey I had begun with a simple pair of heels was only deepening, and there was no turning back. The evening deepened, casting long shadows across the apartment, each one accentuating the subtle curves of the dress and the delicate arch of my heels. I had moved through every corner of the space, experimenting with posture, gestures, and expressions, each step guided by the heels that had become extensions of my identity. But as the shadows grew, so did a sense of anticipation, a suspenseful tension that clung to me like a second skin. I stood by the mirror again, scrutinizing my reflection. The persona I had cultivated over the past hours, Alex, elevated, transformed, confident, and vulnerable all at once, stared back at me. I traced my fingers along the neckline of the dress, letting the silky fabric slip through my hands, feeling the weight of the transformation settle into my bones. The heels beneath me seemed to whisper, urging me to move further, to explore deeper, to embrace every detail of this exhilarating identity. The apartment was quiet, yet every sound seemed magnified. A distant siren, the hum of traffic, the faint rustle of the curtains, all of it heightened my awareness, each noise a reminder of the fragile boundary between freedom and exposure. The suspense had transformed from casual curiosity into a tangible presence, a constant reminder that this exploration was as risky as it was thrilling. I experimented with movement again, walking slowly across the room, letting the dress sway naturally, feeling the heels guide my steps. Each click against the hardwood was a pulse, a heartbeat of tension that resonated through me. I tilted my head, adjusted my posture, and let my fingers trace lightly along my arms, testing the boundaries of the persona I had embraced. The reflection in the mirror became a silent teacher, guiding me as I discovered new nuances in balance, poise, and expression. Curiosity pushed me further. I picked up a small clutch from Emma's drawer, a delicate accessory that added a touch of sophistication to my look. Sliding it into my hand, I felt the subtle thrill. This small object transformed my posture, influenced my movements, and completed the visual story I was crafting. Each detail, no matter how minor, deepened my immersion, intensifying both the exhilaration and the suspense. A sudden sound from the hallway made me freeze, heels clicking softly as I shifted my weight. My pulse spiked. Was it Emma? A neighbor? The suspense surged, wrapping around me like a tangible force. I held my breath, air straining, heart racing. The thrill of potential exposure was intoxicating, an addictive mixture of fear and excitement that made every small gesture feel charged with meaning. I moved cautiously toward the living room, the heels guiding each step with precision. The dress swayed with each movement, the reflection in the mirror capturing every subtle nuance. I practiced poses, tested gestures, and explored the rhythm imposed by the heels, each step deepening the persona I had cultivated. The suspense remained, a constant undercurrent that made the transformation feel urgent, vital, and intensely real. I paused by the balcony, letting the cool evening air brush against my skin. The city beyond stretched endlessly, a vast expanse of movement and sound, yet within the apartment, time felt suspended. Every detail, the sway of the dress, the tilt of my head, the subtle shift of my hips, was magnified by the suspense, by the thrill of inhabiting this persona fully, while knowing that exposure was always a possibility. The heels had become more than shoes. They were instruments of transformation, amplifying every sensation, every emotion, every flicker of tension. Returning inside, I noticed a small misstep in my balance, a minor wobble that made my heart skip a beat. The suspense surged. I caught myself against the edge of the table, feeling the fabric of the dress slip slightly, the heels testing my poise. For a moment, vulnerability overtook confidence, reminding me that the persona I had embraced was delicate, fragile, and dependent on every small adjustment. The thrill of being both elevated and exposed created a tension that was almost overwhelming, yet undeniably addictive. I sank onto the couch, letting the heels rest beneath me, and ran my hands over my legs, feeling the subtle arch, the altered posture, the tension coiled in every muscle. The reflection in the mirror captured Alex fully, the confident, playful, transformed persona that had emerged over hours of experimentation. The suspense of discovery, the thrill of transformation, the delicate balance between fear and exhilaration, they had all converged, creating a heady, intoxicating climax of emotion and sensation. As I gazed at my reflection one final time before preparing for the evening, a knock sounded at the door. My heart leapt. Emma? A neighbor? The suspense hit a fever pitch, every nerve in my body alive with anticipation and fear. The heels beneath me seemed to vibrate with the tension, the dress swaying gently as I took a cautious step toward the sound. The moment felt suspended in time, a perfect convergence of fear, excitement, and anticipation. I glanced at the mirror again. Alex, fully transformed, fully alive, and fully exposed in this delicate balance between thrill and vulnerability, stared back at me. The suspense had reached its peak. The persona had fully emerged, and the heels, the dress, the makeup, and every subtle detail had become part of a living, breathing identity. The journey of transformation was complete for now, but the climax was just beginning. The knock at the door wasn't a polite rap this time. It was sharp, urgent, demanding attention. My heart skipped a beat, and the heels beneath my feet suddenly felt heavier, more consequential, as if they had become an instrument of suspense themselves. Every nerve in my body heightened, every muscle tensed in anticipation. Emma could be home, or worse, a neighbor might have stumbled upon my secret. I froze in place, clutching the edges of the dress, feeling the silky fabric slip slightly beneath my fingers. My reflection in the mirror seemed to stare back at me with wide, questioning eyes, mirroring the panic rising in my chest. The persona I had embraced, the confidence I had cultivated over hours of experimentation, suddenly felt fragile, precarious, and vulnerable. Every click of my heels against the hardwood floor echoed like a warning. The knock came again, louder, more insistent. My pulse thundered in my ears as I weighed my options. Should I answer? Should I hide? Each movement felt amplified by the heels, the sway of my hips, the tilt of my shoulders. It was all on display, a performance for a potential audience I wasn't ready to face. The suspense was suffocating, electrifying, every second stretching longer than the last. I decided to move cautiously toward the door, the heels forcing deliberate steps that tested my balance. Each click against the floor felt like a drumbeat of tension, each sway of the dress a reminder of how exposed I was. I glanced at the mirror once more. Alex, fully transformed, stared back with a mix of fear, exhilaration, and undeniable beauty. The persona I had embraced was alive, but it was now at the mercy of the outside world. Before I could reach the door, the sound of the lock turning made my stomach drop. Someone was entering. My mind raced. Emma? A neighbor? The suspense surged like wildfire through me, every heartbeat a rapid drum of fear and anticipation. I realized I had mere moments to decide what to do, and the heaviness of the heels beneath my feet made every second feel like an eternity. I stepped back, glancing around for a hiding place. The living room offered few options. The heels made rapid movement risky. I considered diving behind the couch, but the dress would betray me. The mirror reflected the possibilities and the dangers at once. My reflection seemed to warn me. One wrong step, and everything could collapse. The door opened. A shadow fell across the hallway, and I held my breath, frozen in place. The person paused, and a familiar voice, Emma's, called out, "Alex? Are you here?" My chest tightened. I had been caught in the most intimate act of transformation, and the persona I had worked so hard to inhabit was suddenly under threat of exposure. I forced myself to breathe slowly, heels pressing firmly against the floor for balance. The reflection in the mirror seemed to watch with curiosity and judgment, reflecting both my vulnerability and my daring. I needed a plan. Quick thinking was essential. Should I retreat, attempt to hide, or confront the situation head-on? The suspense clawed at me, every second stretching into unbearable tension. Emma's voice came again, closer now, accompanied by the faint sound of footsteps approaching the living room. The thrill of being discovered mingled with fear in an intoxicating mix. My heels, which had empowered me for hours, now seemed like a trap, each step a potential reveal. The reflection in the mirror seemed to urge caution, but a part of me, thrilled, emboldened, alive, wanted to see how far I could push the situation. I took a deep breath, steadying myself on the couch, letting the heels anchor me as I moved slightly out of the line of sight. The suspense was nearly unbearable, a tightrope of emotion that made every nerve sing. I could hear Emma's footsteps growing louder, her voice filled with a teasing edge. "Alex, I know you're in here somewhere. Come out, or I'll find you." The thrill surged anew, my pulse pounding, my body poised between exposure and concealment. A sudden idea struck me. What if I embraced the suspense fully? What if I allowed the persona I had cultivated to face discovery boldly, even if it risked embarrassment or judgment? The heels under my feet felt like a weapon and a shield simultaneously, forcing poise, grace, and presence. I straightened my back, adjusted the dress, and let my hands rest lightly along my thighs. The mirror reflected a version of Alex that was ready to confront the suspense head-on, confident despite the vulnerability. Emma stepped closer, the footsteps echoing ominously. The suspense had reached a fever pitch, each second stretched to a taut string of anticipation. I felt my body respond instinctively, every gesture guided by the persona I had embodied for hours. The heels, the dress, the makeup, the accessories, all elements converged into a single, tense moment of potential revelation. Then, she appeared at the doorway. Emma paused, eyes widening slightly as she took in the transformed Alex. The suspense exploded into full awareness. My secret, my persona, my thrill of transformation, all laid bare in a single, precarious instant. I held my breath, poised between exhilaration and fear, wondering how she would react, and whether the heels that had guided me here would also carry me through the next pivotal moment. Emma's eyes widened as they swept over me, her gaze lingering on the heels, the dress, the subtle shimmer of makeup, and the transformation that had taken place. My chest tightened, every heartbeat hammering against my ribs. The suspense that had been building over hours now erupted into a tangible force, pressing down on me with the weight of potential exposure. I was frozen, poised on the edge of exhilaration and panic, every movement amplified by the heels beneath my feet. "Alex, you've been experimenting, haven't you?" Emma's voice was soft, teasing, but carried a sharp undertone that made my stomach twist. She stepped closer, curiosity and amusement mixing in her expression, and I realized there was no way to hide. The suspense had reached its peak. I had to confront the moment head-on. I took a slow, deliberate breath, letting the heels anchor me as I straightened my back. The dress clung to me perfectly, the silky fabric flowing with each subtle sway of my hips. I lifted my chin, forcing confidence into my posture, though my pulse raced like a drum in my ears. I couldn't help it, I admitted, voice trembling slightly. I wanted to see how it felt. Emma's lips curved into a mischievous smile, eyes sparkling. "How it feels, huh? Well, I can see why you couldn't stop." Her gaze flicked to the heels, to the dress, to my carefully styled appearance. The suspense lingered in the room like electricity, each second stretching, each glance charged with possibility. I could feel my vulnerability magnifying the thrill, the intensity of the moment almost unbearable. I shifted slightly, heels clicking softly against the hardwood floor, a subtle rhythm that heightened the tension. Every sway of my hips, every tilt of my head, every delicate gesture was magnified by the suspense of Emma's presence. I was both terrified and exhilarated, exposed yet alive, vulnerable yet emboldened by the persona I had inhabited. Emma circled me slowly, examining the transformation with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. "You've really committed," she said, voice low, almost conspiratorial. The suspense tightened around me, like a vice. I realized that my secret, once thrilling in solitude, was now a shared tension, the stakes higher than ever. Every step I took, every slight movement of the heels carried weight, carried meaning, carried risk. I tried to explain, to justify the hours of exploration, but words failed me. Instead, I lifted my hand to brush a stray strand of hair behind my ear, the movement subtle but deliberate. The heels forced each gesture to be elegant, precise, accentuating the transformation in ways I hadn't anticipated. Emma's gaze followed every movement, the suspense building as she seemed to evaluate not just the transformation, but the person I had become in these hours of experimentation. Then, the unexpected happened. A sudden sound from outside the apartment made both of us jump. The doorbell rang sharply, cutting through the tension like a knife. Emma's eyes flicked toward the sound, then back to me, and I felt the suspense spike. Who could it be? Another neighbor? A friend? The risk of exposure had escalated instantly, the delicate balance I had maintained over hours threatened by a new variable. Emma's expression shifted, curiosity mingling with mischief. "Do you want me to see who it is, or do you want to handle it?" she asked, voice teasing but firm. I swallowed hard, heels clicking softly as I shifted my weight. The suspense was overwhelming. Every instinct screamed caution, yet every fiber of the persona I had embraced urged boldness. I took a hesitant step toward the door, heels guiding my movements with precision, every sway of my hips a dance of tension and confidence. Emma followed silently, her presence amplifying both the thrill and the fear. My reflection in the nearby mirror caught my eye, Alex, fully transformed, poised yet vulnerable, ready to confront the unknown. When I opened the door, the figure standing there made my heart leap. An unexpected visitor, a friend I hadn't anticipated, their eyes wide in surprise as they took in my appearance. The suspense now felt almost unbearable, each second stretching into eternity. I could feel the persona I had built over hours under scrutiny, every detail of the transformation exposed in a single glance. Emma leaned lightly against the doorframe, her eyes dancing with amusement and approval. "Looks like your experiment just got a new level of stakes," she whispered. My pulse raced, heels pressing firmly against the floor, every movement a careful negotiation of balance and poise. The suspense was electrifying, the thrill of exposure mingling with the fear of judgment, creating a heady, almost intoxicating tension. The visitor's expression shifted from surprise to curiosity, then to awe. "Alex, wow," they breathed. "You look incredible." The words hit me like a wave, a mixture of relief and heightened suspense. The persona I had inhabited had been acknowledged, yet the stakes were now higher than ever. I was fully exposed, fully alive in this moment, and the suspense, once a private thrill, had become a shared, intense force. Emma's laughter, soft and melodic, echoed in the room. "See? I told you there was something special about this," she said. The suspense remained, coiling around us, electrifying the air, binding us in a delicate dance of tension, excitement, and revelation. My heels clicked softly as I adjusted my posture, each subtle movement a testament to the transformation I had undergone and the thrilling risk of being discovered. The visitor stepped closer, examining the details, the dress, the heels, the makeup, the confident poise. Every detail had meaning, every gesture carried weight. The suspense was at its peak, a perfect storm of exhilaration, fear, and anticipation. I realized that the journey I had begun alone, experimenting in secret, had now escalated into a dramatic confrontation with the world, a climax of transformation, exposure, and emotional intensity. The visitor's awe-filled gaze lingered, and my pulse raced. I could feel the weight of the heels beneath me, each step a delicate negotiation between poise and panic. The suspense wrapped around me, thick and intoxicating, making every gesture feel monumental. Emma's presence beside me added another layer of complexity, a silent challenge, a tease, and a grounding force all at once. "Do you want to come in?" I heard myself ask, voice trembling slightly despite the confident posture I forced. The heels clicked softly against the hardwood, each sound echoing with the tension of the moment. Emma's eyes sparkled with amusement and anticipation, silently urging me to embrace the situation fully. The visitor nodded, stepping cautiously into the apartment. The door closed behind them, and the space, once quiet and private, now felt charged with scrutiny. Every detail, the dress, the makeup, the heels, my posture, was on display, every movement amplified by the presence of an audience I hadn't anticipated. My reflection in the mirror seemed almost to hold its breath with me, watching, judging, guiding. Emma moved closer, her hand brushing lightly against my arm in a teasing, possessive gesture. "Don't worry, they're just seeing the magic I already told you about," she said, her voice low and intimate. The suspense coiled tighter, and I could feel it settling in my chest, thrilling and suffocating all at once. Every breath I took, every subtle sway of my hips, every tilt of my head carried weight, meaning, and the thrill of exposure. The visitor's eyes scanned me, lingering on the heels. "I've never seen anyone pull this off. It's like you were made for them," they whispered. The words sent a shiver down my spine, part exhilaration, part fear. My secret, my exploration, my private thrill, it was now witnessed and validated, yet the suspense of potential judgment loomed. Emma's gaze shifted between us, a mix of amusement and pride. "See? Told you they'd appreciate it," she said softly, a sly smile curving her lips. Her presence magnified the tension, balancing between supportive and provocative. The suspense wasn't just about being seen anymore. It was about being acknowledged, tested, and perhaps even judged in ways I hadn't anticipated. I tried to maintain composure, heels anchoring each step, but the visitor's admiration made it difficult. I moved to the mirror again, adjusting my posture, letting the dress flow naturally, testing how fully I could inhabit this persona under scrutiny. The suspense was a living thing, stretching and contracting with each heartbeat, each glance, each subtle shift of balance. Then came the unexpected, a sound from the hallway, faint but distinct, echoed through the apartment. My heart leapt. Another neighbor? A friend? A sudden delivery? The suspense skyrocketed, tension coiling tight around my chest. Emma's eyes flicked toward the door, then back at me, a silent question and challenge in her expression. The heels beneath me felt both empowering and restrictive, each step a calculated negotiation of balance and poise. I took a deep breath, letting the persona I had created guide me. "We might have another visitor," I said softly, trying to keep my voice calm. The visitor looked alarmed, and I could feel my own pulse racing in response. The suspense wasn't just external, it had become internal, a storm of anticipation, fear, and exhilaration that threatened to overwhelm me. Emma laughed softly, her hand still lightly brushing my arm. "Don't worry," she whispered. "It'll make this more fun." Her words ignited a mixture of thrill and dread in me. The suspense was no longer a simple fear of being discovered. It was a high-stakes game, a test of composure, transformation, and control under pressure. Every heel click, every subtle gesture, every tilt of my head was now charged with significance. I moved toward the hallway cautiously, heels clicking softly, dress swaying with each step. The suspense twisted tighter with each movement, my reflection in the mirror tracking me like a silent witness, amplifying every nuance of my posture, balance, and expression. The persona I had cultivated was alive, confident, and vulnerable simultaneously, and the tension of the moment tested every ounce of that persona's poise. The sound grew closer. I realized the suspense had reached a tipping point. The delicate balance between control and exposure was about to shatter. The visitor's eyes were wide with anticipation. Emma's gaze was playful yet commanding, and I stood at the center of a perfect storm of tension, transformation, and vulnerability. The heels beneath me were no longer just shoes. They were instruments of elevation and vulnerability, guiding my posture, my confidence, and the suspense itself. When the door swung open, a shadow fell across the hallway, and I froze mid-step. The suspense exploded fully. Another unexpected figure had arrived, and the stakes surged. Every heartbeat, every click of the heels, every sway of my hips became a marker of tension, fear, and exhilaration. I realized in that instant that the transformation I had explored in private was now a public, high-stakes performance, and there was no turning back. The hallway was alive with possibility, each sound echoing like a drumbeat in my chest. My heels clicked deliberately against the floor, each step amplifying the tension that had been building for hours. The dress swayed naturally, a visual declaration of the persona I had fully embraced, and yet every movement was underscored by the fear of exposure. The suspense was almost tangible, wrapping around me, tightening with every heartbeat. Emma stayed close, her presence a mix of support and provocation. Her hand brushed my arm lightly, guiding me without touching, teasing me without speaking. "You're handling this perfectly," she whispered, her voice soft but electrifying, sending shivers down my spine. The suspense coiled tighter in my chest, a living thing, feeding off the uncertainty, the exhilaration, the vulnerability. The unexpected visitor, whose arrival had thrown me off balance moments before, stepped further into the apartment. Their eyes, wide with curiosity, scanned every detail of my appearance. The heels, the dress, the subtle makeup, even the posture I had practiced so meticulously, were on full display. My reflection in the mirror caught every nuance, doubling the tension, reminding me of both my power and my fragility. I forced a steady breath, heels pressing into the floor for grounding. I didn't expect anyone else, I admitted, my voice trembling slightly despite the confident exterior I projected. The suspense hung in the air, thick and electric, each word stretching the tension further. Emma's eyes glinted with amusement, silent encouragement, and a subtle challenge. She wanted to see how far I could push it. The visitor stepped closer, admiration and curiosity mixing in their expression. "I've never seen anyone carry themselves like this," they said softly, awe evident in their tone. The words thrilled me, but also amplified the suspense. My secret, my private experimentation, was now under scrutiny, evaluated in real time. Each subtle movement of my hips, each tilt of my head, each click of the heels became a statement, a declaration, a risk. A sudden knock at the door shattered the fragile calm. My chest tightened, the suspense spiking to unbearable heights. Who could it be now? Another neighbor? Delivery? Or worse, someone who might reveal everything? The heels beneath me seemed to amplify each heartbeat, each step, each pulse of fear and excitement. The transformation, once private and thrilling, now teetered on the edge of chaos. Emma's hand brushed mine, a grounding presence amid the storm. "It's just another surprise," she whispered, a teasing lilt in her voice. The suspense, though, was real. Each second stretched, the uncertainty magnified by the unexpected, the unplanned, the unknown. My reflection in the mirror captured Alex fully, the confident, transformed, yet vulnerable persona that had carried me through hours of experimentation, but now that persona faced real stakes. I stepped toward the door cautiously, heels clicking softly, posture perfectly aligned despite the tension twisting through me. The visitor followed, eyes wide, every movement magnified by suspense. Emma remained a few steps behind, her presence both protective and provocative, a reminder that I wasn't alone, yet fully exposed. When I opened the door, another figure appeared, a friend I hadn't expected, their expression oscillating between shock and curiosity. The suspense exploded fully. Every secret, every thrill, every carefully cultivated gesture was now visible to multiple witnesses. My heels pressed firmly against the floor, anchoring me, giving me poise amid the chaos. Emma's laughter, soft and melodic, filled the apartment. "Looks like your experiment has an audience now," she said, eyes glinting with mischief. The suspense wrapped tighter, coiling around my chest, igniting a mixture of fear, exhilaration, and anticipation. Every gesture, every step, every subtle movement of the dress and heels carried weight, consequence, and significance. I realized in that instant that the persona I had cultivated in private, the confidence, the allure, the vulnerability was now fully revealed. The suspense had reached its peak, the stakes higher than ever, and every heartbeat felt like a drum of possibility, danger, and exhilaration. I was both exposed and empowered, every element of my transformation amplified by the presence of others, by the unexpected twists, and by the constant, intoxicating threat of judgment or discovery. The visitors exchanged glances, curiosity and awe mixing in their expressions. Emma's teasing smile reminded me that this was a test, a challenge, and an opportunity all at once. The suspense surged, a living force that electrified the room, connecting everyone in a shared tension that was thrilling and terrifying simultaneously. I sank slightly onto the couch, letting the heels rest beneath me, fingers tracing lightly along my legs. The reflection in the mirror captured Alex fully, the transformed persona, poised yet vulnerable, confident yet at the mercy of the suspenseful moment. The experience of hours of private experimentation had escalated into a high-stakes confrontation with reality, and there was no turning back. The doorbell rang again, sharp and insistent, slicing through the charged atmosphere like a knife. My pulse spiked, the suspense tightening around me, yet a strange exhilaration surged as well. The transformation, the heels, the dress, the persona, they had all led to this pinnacle of suspense, exposure, and emotional intensity. Every click of the heels, every subtle gesture, every heartbeat was now a note in a symphony of risk, thrill, and revelation. Emma leaned close, whispering in my ear, "Ready for the final act?" Her words sent shivers down my spine. The suspense had reached a fever pitch, each second stretching, every possibility hanging in the air. I realized, with a mixture of dread and exhilaration, that the climax, the moment of ultimate risk, exposure, and revelation, was upon us. The final knock at the door echoed like a drumbeat in my chest, each click of my heels amplifying the suspense that had been building for hours. My reflection in the mirror seemed almost alive, watching, judging, guiding me as I faced the ultimate test of exposure and transformation. Alex, fully embodied, poised, and vulnerable, was now at the mercy of the unknown visitor and the intense scrutiny of those already in the room. Emma's hand brushed lightly along my arm, grounding me, teasing me, reminding me that I wasn't alone but also that the suspense was real. "Are you ready?" she whispered, eyes sparkling with mischief and challenge. I swallowed hard, letting the heels anchor me, taking in a deep, steadying breath. Every ounce of the persona I had cultivated, confidence, poise, allure, was about to be tested at its peak. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside, a neighbor I hadn't anticipated, their eyes wide with surprise and curiosity. The suspense spiked immediately, every heartbeat echoing through my chest, every subtle sway of my hips magnified by the heels. The visitor's gaze swept over me, the dress, the makeup, the perfectly balanced posture, and I could feel the persona I had built in private now exposed, evaluated, and dissected. Emma's laughter, soft and melodic, filled the apartment, a playful accompaniment to the tension that gripped me. "Looks like your secret isn't so secret anymore," she teased, her eyes twinkling. The suspense coiled tighter, electrifying the space, making each step, each gesture, each heartbeat a mixture of exhilaration and fear. I realized that the transformation, once a private indulgence, had escalated into a high-stakes drama, a performance where every detail mattered. I adjusted my posture slightly, letting the dress sway naturally, feeling the heels press firmly against the floor. Every movement was deliberate, every gesture charged with significance. The visitors' expressions ranged from curiosity to admiration, their eyes reflecting the persona I had cultivated, fully realized and fully exposed. The suspense was a tangible presence, wrapping around me, heightening my awareness, intensifying every sensation. Then came the unexpected twist. My phone buzzed on the table, a notification flashing with a message from Emma's friend I hadn't expected. "Be careful, I'll be over soon. Don't let anyone see you yet." My heart leapt, the suspense spiking into near panic. The heels beneath me felt heavier, every step a calculated risk, every gesture a potential revelation. I was caught between exhilaration and dread, the persona I had embraced teetering on the edge of exposure. Emma's eyes met mine, a silent understanding passing between us. She smirked, teasing, yet supportive. "Looks like the suspense isn't over yet," she whispered. The thrill of being seen, evaluated, and admired mingled with fear, creating a cocktail of emotions so intense it made my pulse race. Every heartbeat, every sway of the dress, every click of the heels was amplified, each movement a negotiation of balance, poise, and secrecy. I moved toward the couch cautiously, letting the visitors settle, heels clicking softly against the hardwood. The suspense tightened, wrapping around me like a living entity, feeding off my anxiety, excitement, and vulnerability. Emma's presence beside me grounded and provoked me simultaneously, reminding me that this was as much a test of my composure as it was a revelation of my transformation. One of the visitors stepped closer, curiosity evident in their expression. "I've never seen anyone pull this off. It's mesmerizing," they said softly. The words sent a shiver down my spine, a mix of relief and heightened tension. My secret, my exploration, my private thrill, was now publicly acknowledged, yet the suspense of potential judgment, exposure, and unexpected twists remained unbearably high. Suddenly, a noise from the balcony made all of us jump. A chair scraped, a wind chime tinkled, and my pulse leapt. The suspense had reached a fever pitch, every sense heightened, every muscle tense, every heartbeat amplified. The persona I had embodied, Alex, confident, elegant, yet vulnerable, was now under scrutiny from multiple angles, each one a test of composure, identity, and control. Emma's hand slid into mine, squeezing gently, a grounding presence amid the storm of tension. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "we handle it together." Her words were both reassurance and challenge, intensifying the suspense while offering a lifeline. I felt the heels beneath me as both anchor and risk, guiding my balance while reminding me that the moment was precarious. The visitor's attention remained on me, each subtle gesture, each sway of the dress, each click of the heels amplified in significance. I realized, in that instant, that the transformation I had pursued for hours had reached its ultimate climax, not just in appearance, but in emotional intensity, suspense, and exposure. Every detail, every nuance, every heartbeat was part of a delicate, high-stakes performance that could shift in an instant. Then, just as I was beginning to process the full weight of the moment, the sound of a key turning in the main door made my heart stop. Emma's eyes widened slightly, and I froze mid-step, heels pressed firmly against the floor. The suspense reached an unbearable peak, another unexpected presence, another potential reveal, another twist in the story that could unravel everything. My reflection in the mirror captured it all. Alex, poised yet vulnerable, confident yet teetering on the edge of exposure. The heels, the dress, the persona, all at the mercy of chance. And then, a voice from the doorway. "Alex, we need to talk." The suspense exploded fully. Every heartbeat, every click of the heels, every subtle sway of the dress, every glance in the mirror held infinite potential. Exposure, confrontation, revelation, transformation. The room seemed to hold its breath along with me, the suspense so thick it was almost visible, almost tangible, as the ultimate challenge loomed just steps away. The front door clicked open slowly, and the tension in the room spiked instantly. Every heartbeat thundered in my chest, every muscle tensed, and the heels beneath my feet seemed to grip the floor like they were rooting me in place. Alex, poised yet vulnerable, stood frozen in the middle of the living room, fully transformed, fully exposed, and fully alive in this charged moment of suspense. Emma's hand remained lightly on my arm, grounding me, teasing me, reminding me that even amid chaos, we were a unit. "This is it," she whispered, voice low and full of mischief. "Let's see how far you've come." Her words only intensified the suspense, making my pulse quicken, every nerve in my body alert to the slightest movement or sound. I glanced at the mirror, my reflection capturing every detail: the heels, the dress, the makeup, the confidence I had built, now mingled with vulnerability and fear. The visitors already in the room looked at me with wide-eyed fascination, curiosity, and awe. I could feel the suspense building like a living entity around us, each breath, each sway, each click of my heels amplifying the tension. A shadow fell across the doorway, and I froze. The key had turned, and a figure I hadn't expected stepped inside. My heart nearly stopped. Recognition hit me instantly. Someone whose judgment could change everything. Someone who might unravel the careful balance of my private thrill and the public revelation. The suspense was unbearable. Each second stretched painfully long, each heartbeat echoing in my ears. Emma squeezed my hand gently, grounding me, whispering reassurance. "No matter what happens, you've owned it," she said, her words a lifeline in the storm of tension. I nodded slightly, letting the heels anchor me, letting the persona I had cultivated, Alex, confident, poised, transformed, stand fully in the space of uncertainty. The suspense was now at its peak, every movement, every glance, every subtle gesture a potential tipping point. The unexpected visitors stepped fully into the room, eyes widening as they took in the transformed me. "Alex, is that really you?" they asked, voice wavering between disbelief and admiration. My throat tightened, and I realized the suspense was now as much internal as external. The persona I had embraced, the thrill of transformation, the vulnerability of exposure, all collided in a heady mix of exhilaration and fear. Emma's laughter filled the room softly, her eyes sparkling. "Looks like the experiment is a bigger deal than we thought," she teased, her tone light but charged with tension. I could feel the visitors' attention, the unexpected arrival, the uncertainty of judgment. It all coalesced into a pulse of suspense that wrapped around me like a living thing. The heels beneath my feet felt both empowering and precarious, guiding each step while reminding me of the stakes. I shifted slightly, letting the dress sway naturally, heels clicking softly, each movement deliberate, each gesture a negotiation of balance, poise, and exposure. The reflection in the mirror captured it all, magnifying the suspense, amplifying the emotional intensity. Alex, fully transformed, stood at the center of a web of tension, every element, appearance, posture, persona, under scrutiny. Then came the twist, a faint sound from the hallway, almost imperceptible at first. My pulse jumped, the suspense spiking immediately. Another visitor? Another challenge? A neighbor? The room seemed to hold its breath, mirroring my own heightened awareness. The persona I had embodied for hours was now facing unpredictable forces, testing the limits of courage, composure, and the thrill of transformation. Emma leaned close, her voice a soft murmur. "Whatever happens next, own it." Her words sent a shiver through me, thrill and fear mingling in an almost unbearable rush. The suspense wrapped tighter, coiling around me, every heartbeat a drumbeat of uncertainty. I took a slow, steadying breath, heels pressing into the floor, grounding me even as the room seemed charged with potential revelation, judgment, and excitement. The visitors' expressions ranged from awe to disbelief, each movement and gesture of mine amplified by the suspense. Every sway of the dress, every tilt of the head, every click of the heels was magnified, charged with possibility. My reflection seemed almost to whisper, urging me to stay composed, to embrace the persona fully, to survive this delicate, thrilling balance. And then the final, unexpected moment. A hand reached toward the doorknob behind me. The sound was soft, almost casual, yet it carried the weight of inevitability. My chest tightened. The suspense was unbearable, each second a stretched eternity. Emma's eyes met mine, her smirk a mixture of reassurance and provocation. The persona, the heels, the transformation, and the thrill of exposure, all converged in this single, precarious instant. The hand turned the knob. The door creaked. My heart stopped. Every guest froze. Every eye locked on me. The suspense had reached its peak, a living, breathing tension that held us all in suspended anticipation. The heels beneath me seemed to pulse with the rhythm of my racing heartbeat, the dress clinging perfectly, the reflection in the mirror capturing every ounce of vulnerability, confidence, and transformation. And then the story froze. The next moment hung in the air, unresolved, leaving everything uncertain. Would the new arrival discover my secret? Would Emma intervene? Would the thrill of transformation survive exposure? The suspense lingered, potent and unresolved, leaving viewers on the edge, hearts pounding, eager for the continuation of Alex's journey.